Hey guys, I finally got my hands on the Pat McGrath Mothership 6 palette, the Midnight Sun palette, which I have on my eyes right now. So I'll be doing what I normally do, giving you some background info on the palette, giving you some swatches, giving you a demo on this eye look, and then I'll also do some comparison swatches with other shades from other Pat McGrath palettes that I thought were maybe a little bit similar, a little bit close. But let's go ahead and talk about the palette. So I just purchased this from Sephora. I think that they had like a very quick little blip on the Pat McGrath website where the palette was actually available for maybe it was like an hour. And I actually blasted it out and a bunch of you picked it up or were able to pick it up at that time. I actually missed out on it, which was fine because I've had the absolute worst luck with the Pat McGrath site. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait for it to come to Sephora. And then it was available on the Pat McGrath site, I think starting last week. And I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna wait. I'm not gonna push it. And so when it became available at Sephora, I ran into town and I got the palette. So that's why it has taken me so long, and it was worth the wait. So this is the outer cardboard packaging, which I'm sure you guys have seen already. Very typical Pat McGrath. The image is actually, I think, pretty much the same as the Bronze Seduction one, but it has just like a purple tone, like there's a different coloring to it, but beautiful nonetheless. And same deal, the palette sits inside and then there's a separate card with all of the shade names on here. So this palette is priced the same as all of the other Mothership palettes at $125, and it's pretty much exactly the same. So here's a close-up look of the palette on the inside. Same packaging as always. There's a big beveled mirror on the inside. It's nice and heavy. There's 10 shadows on the inside. The 6 on the left-hand side are, I guess you could say, the more quote-unquote ordinary type shades. And then the 4 shades on the right are what I call the party shades. They're of a different formula. They have a completely different feel to them. They're duochromy, they're glittery. They can be a little bit more difficult to work with. So those are the 4 shades on the right-hand side. So let me show you the swatches of the 10 shades in this palette. I swatched from left to right, top to bottom. I did the 6 on the left, and then I did the 4 on the right. So starting at the left, we have Skin Show Moon Glow, Bronze Eclipse, Vermilion Venom, Extreme Dusk, Taboo, Wicked Envy, and now we have the 4 party shades on the right-hand side. The first one is Blood Moon 005, Jubilee, Blitz Violet Orchid, and then lastly we have Astral Solstice. So I don't know if you could tell from the swatches, but the 2 shades that I found to be a little bit dry feeling when I finger swatched them was this shade down here, which is Extreme Dusk, I believe. Yeah, Extreme Dusk, and Jubilee, which is this gold shade up here. This one had like a really gritty, kind of like sandy feel to it. These 2 shades over here had formulas that felt very, very familiar to me. I feel like in the other Mothership palettes, you'll have very, very similar formulas to those, if not the same. And then this Blitz Violet Orchid shade is, I feel like, pretty much the same formula as the red shade. I can't remember the name of it, the red shade in the Bronze Seduction palette. It has that same kind of smooth feeling to it. And then these 2 have like a loose kind of pressed glitter kind of feel to them. And then this one just felt really sandy. As for these other 5 shades here, these all felt like kind of typical Pat McGrath shadows, especially these satins. They're very, very creamy. They're very pigmented. And then these 2 mattes were very kind of like silky soft. Again, this one was the only one that I felt a little bit dry. This actually reminded me of the deep kind of purpley shade in the La Vie en Rose palette, which I didn't actually really get along with. So in today's look, I actually used this shade, and this shade, and a little bit of this shade. So this shade I did find to be a little bit patchy or just a little bit harder to work with. I think it could just be a characteristic of a matte shade that's very, very dark. They're just a little bit more difficult to work with, and I am definitely no expert. So I just personally had a little bit of trouble with this, just kind of blending it out and kind of making it look a little bit more blown out and smoked out. So then I kind of added a little bit of this pigment to kind of help the transition, which I think did help a little bit. And then I have this on the inner corner, and I have this pretty much just all over my lid over this shade. And I actually really, really like this eye look. I think I'm like ready for fall. I feel like I'm ready for Halloween. I just love it. So other than those 4 shades, I have not gotten a chance to use this palette otherwise. So this really is like a first impressions. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that in the beginning. I'll have it in the title for sure of this video. So those are the only 4 shades that I've used in this palette so far. And I really like it despite the difficulty that this gave me. So just some additional thoughts about this palette. When I first saw preview pics of this palette, it was almost like I had the same reaction I did to the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette, where I felt like each individual shade was very, very beautiful, but I just didn't like them all together. I felt like the color story just wasn't really for me. And I kind of feel the same way about this palette. Like, I love each individual shade. Each one looks absolutely beautiful. I love this green. I love this purple, which is kind of more like a periwinkle, which is stunning. I mean, all of the shades undeniably are beautiful. But something about the color story, something about all of them together just didn't really speak to me when I saw pictures online. But now that I have it in person, and again, like, it was like the same thing that happened to me with the Denona palette, I feel like maybe it's because I can see the textures, or I can see like the different nuances in these duochromes, that I like this color story much, much more in person. But when I saw it online, I kept thinking like, oh, maybe, maybe I would have made this more of like a pink color, or maybe I would have made that actually like more of like a black color or like a deep purple color. I don't know, like I kind of kept like trying to design my own palette out of it. But now that I have it in my hands, now that I've swatched it, now that I've actually put some on my eyes, I kind of appreciate the color story a lot more than I did. And that's not to say like every palette that comes out, I need to love the color story. It's not going to happen. There are plenty of palettes out there where I don't love the color story, but there are definitely ones that I need to play with and that I need to experience firsthand to kind of get a better sense of them, to then be able to like kind of further appreciate what's going on in here. And I feel that way about these last 2 palettes that I've talked about. So those are my general thoughts about this palette. I am definitely going to be playing with this a lot more. I want to dig into these party shades a lot more, especially these 2 here. This one, like I mentioned, it just feels a lot grittier than I thought. So before we get into the demo, I'm just going to do some comparison swatches between this palette and any other shades that I find similar in any of the other palettes. And what I'll do is I'll have the Midnight Sun swatch on the left-hand side. I'll have the other swatches on the right-hand side, and I'll just put on the screen what shades they are and what palette they're from. So I hope you found those comparison swatches helpful. Let's go ahead and jump into the demo now. All right, I am really, really excited to jump into this palette, and I'm sure, I know there's a ton of looks out there using the purple, the green, and this color here, and I think it's definitely going to be hard to stay away from that. And when I did my Metropolis look with Natasha Denona, I felt like I did a lot of green and oranges. When I did my Viseart look, it was green and purples. So I feel like this like trifecta of color here is definitely what's in these days. But I definitely want to do kind of a smoky, dramatic eye look. I am going to lay down this dark brown color everywhere. And when it comes to these very like pigmented matte shadows, I do like to build up very, very slowly. So I am going to start with the fluffiest and biggest blending brush that I have, which is the Isom G34 brush. And I'm going to just pick up a little bit of this color. I think this color actually has some micro glitters in there. I mean, barely. I thought maybe it was like from another shade, but I think it's actually micro glitter in there. Okay, I don't even know if that's gonna show up on the lid. It looks so faint. But I'm just picking up a little bit and even pouncing it off on my hand first just to make sure I don't have too much. And I'm going to just start to brush that along my lash line. Again, really gently. You can see how pigmented it is. I barely picked up any pigment, and I'm brushing it so lightly, yet I feel like I'm getting plenty there. And I'm not being very precise with this application. I just want to lay down just a nice kind of like light layer of this shade and blow out the edges, and then I'm gonna go in with a smaller brush and kind of add more pigment where I need it. Okay, so it looks pretty messy right now. I'm gonna go in with a smaller blending brush, one that has like a decent point to it because I want to be able to get into like the corner here. Okay, I'm gonna take this crease 1 brush from Sonia G, go back into this dark brown shade, and get that right into the inner corner there and really kind of darken up the lash line. Now I'm going to use my Esom S33 brush and blend that out. Maybe take a little bit more pigment there and blend it out so it's a nice even kind of smoky look. So I just kind of like keep adding some pigment. I keep going over it with like a fluffy bending brush just to make sure I get like a smoky effect. I just want to make sure that everything just looks as blown out as possible. I'm going to take my S33 brush and go between this dark color and just dab it once into this red, just to see if I can get it to help with the blending up here. It's, you know, when you use too dark of a shade, it doesn't transition easily. So you kind of have to like use some lighter shades to kind of help it transition into your skin tone. And so it just looks like it's blended out better. I hope I just explained that properly. I feel like I sounded crazy. I think I'm just going to use my fingers. I'm going to use my middle finger and go into this Blitz Violet shade, I think is what it's called. And I'm going to pat this on over the matte shade. Wow. Wow, that is incredible. Holy smokes. Okay, I'm going to finish up my lower lash line with that dark matte shade and a pencil brush. This is the Esom S31. I'm going to take this small eyeshadow brush from Pkwy. This was limited edition, so I'm sorry it's not available anymore. And I'm going to go into the lightest satin shade. I think it's one of the Skin Show shades. And I'm going to add this into the inner corner of my eye. And actually go into that Blitz purple color and line my lower lash line underneath that matte color. I'm just going to line with the purple. Wow. Okay. I am really, really loving this. I feel like I am ready for fall. All right. I'm just going to throw on some eyeliner, mascara, and I'll be right back. All right. Well, there is my completed look. I threw on some Pat McGrath lip gloss and some eyeliner and mascara. I'll have all the details of the makeup that I have on my face down below in my description box, as I normally do. So that is it. Thank you so, so much for tuning in and spending some time with me. I really, really appreciate it. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.